Hello and welcome to Pod of Ages, a League of Legends esports podcast for fans about being a fan by two fans who are extremely tired. As always, I am Cathy at TechStall on Twitter, and I am joined by my lovely co-host Linda, who is iCrystallization on Twitter. Linda, how are you doing?
Oh, it's just, started off, MSI is over. We survived that. Woo! But also, barely, but also extremely tired because I feel like every time there's an international tournament, which is only 2 times, because it's only twice a year.
What about Rift Rivals?
My mistake. 3 times. 3 times. But yeah, every time there's an international tournament, I keep telling myself, like, oh, this is gonna be fine, you know? You're gonna have a proper sleep schedule, because now you don't have to follow, like, 5 different leagues at the same time. But no, right. I just end up more tired and exhausted.
Yeah, I kind of as a general note, again, like, this isn't the first time I've watched MSI, obviously, but I just feel like I had so many emotions in this 1 week. I am exhausted. I feel like this week has lasted a year. It just feels like everything happened all at once.
Yeah.
And I'm just so exhausted, and I can't believe this knockout stage has only been this last week.
Yeah,
it just is so much.
Like, the finals played straight after semifinals was over. So we just got tossed into that.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Also felt like Team Liquid felt like they got tossed into that because
yeah, so today's topics, and this might be kind of a roughshod show because we're just going to spend the first half of it reacting to TL's performance at MSI more generally. I'm sure Linda will have a huge rant in here about IG, which
of course
will be really fun to look forward to. And then for the second topic, we might spend a little bit of time looking back on what success and failure means more broadly in League of Legends for pro players. I think there will be quite a bit of discussion of Psy, Doublelift, even though I promised I'd stop talking about him on this podcast, but some other players, retired players as well. So that's the game plan. So let's just dive straight into MSI.
All right.
You know, I think when I had planned this topic, I put it on our schedule. I will admit, I thought the finals were going to be SKT versus G2, or IG versus G2.
Oh yeah.
Like, I did not think it was gonna be this. Like, this was not even in my wildest dreams what I thought we would be responding to. I was like, maybe we'd get out of groups and make it to semis.
Yeah.
And like that would be it. So this is unexpected. I haven't fully processed my feelings on it yet.
No,
like, what did you think was gonna happen?
I thought it was gonna be IG versus SKT. You know, it's gonna be like the standard. You got the LPL, LCK duking it out in the finals. Then you got NA and EU. They're chilling. They're doing their thing. I thought that, you know, maybe G2 would make it to finals because anything could happen between them and SKT. Well, first of all, I actually didn't even know how groups was gonna look like because TL were flip-flopping all over the place.
Right.
So I was like,
right, absolutely.
Are they gonna make it out of groups? And then they pulled off that. I still have no idea, but they completely smashed G2 in that last game, and then they kicked themselves into semis. But then they were gonna face IG, and I was like, okay, well, you know, Team Liquid, you did your thing. I'm proud of you. You said you were gonna make it out of groups. Jensen fulfilled his promise. He brought Doublelift out of groups. It's cool, you know. My expectations have been met. The bar has been.
My expectations were exceeded because I think up until that last day where they played G2, getting out of groups was dicey.
Okay, yeah, it was.
Right?
It was
right?
dicey.
Like, they were not doing that great. Like, they had smashed their first day against Fengvu.
And Flash Wolves.
And it was Flash Wolves. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe we will go 4-6 again because we'll beat Fangvu and Flash Wolves again. And then we lose to Flash Wolves. And I was like, well, that's it. We're doomed. Because, we'd have to go to tiebreaker. And, then Flash Wolves were doing really good. And then Fangvu was doing really good. And I was like, no, this is it. Like, this is going to be, this like, we're truly going to relegate NA to the wildcard regions. And I'm going to say something that perhaps may be a little bit controversial. It'll be because Fangvu was really good, not because Flash was particularly good. Because I think Flash has fallen off significantly from even last year. But I think Fangvu had such an explosive performance.
Oh yeah, they 2-0 G2, which is
they put G2 firmly in their place. And some of those games, I mean, I know some people will be like, oh well, G2 already had a place in groups, but like, it mattered, right? This wasn't like IG screwing around. Like, these games mattered, and Fangvu was good, and they put up good performances, and I was like, this is it. This is the year where we are relegated to a wild card region only because Vietnam has really stepped it up. Like, they are our equal.
Yeah.
Then that last day happens.
Oh my god. Yeah, then that last day happens, and like, I was basically, preparing myself for the tiebreakers. Like, okay, it's gonna be TL's gonna lose to, because it was SKT and G2 on the last day. And it's like, okay, they're gonna lose to both of them. They're gonna be forced into a tiebreaker against the Flash Wolves. And then they're gonna lose because NA can never win a tiebreaker.
Exactly.
That's just how it is.
That's just how it is.
And then they won, convincingly.
And then there were no tiebreakers. And that was the wildest thing about that last day, too. I was ready. Like, I had fully prepared myself. And then there was no tiebreakers. We just decided. It was over.
I was outside when that game was going on, so I was, like, trying to look on it. I was a bit, like, on and off checking it. Because I also had, like, prepared myself for tiebreakers. I was like, okay, I'll just check in. And then I see that TL are up, like, 10 kills to G2. And they have, like, all the turrets. And I'm just like, well, what is going on? What?
It was a good game. And like, this is the other thing that I shouldn't sound so surprised, but this was not a game where we scraped by. We looked good in that game and we beat them handily. I remember exactly where I was because I was on a train crying like I always do. And just to give context in case anybody has forgotten, because it's been a long week, this was right when the Smithy discourse was hitting its height because he had not had a good play-in stage at all. He was not doing good, and then his groups games were just I mean, they were just like not good games out of him. Mostly I feel like that during that time it was Impact and Jensen really doing a great job. Core JJ was good, but like it was really Impact and Jensen, I think, carrying. And then I don't even remember the game because, as you know, I'm terrible with this, but I know earlier on he finally gets like this really great gank off, and I actually fist pump in the train. Like me, I'm sitting there on the train in public, in full view of everybody, and I fist pump, and then when they finally win, I'm like crying on the train, and I put on makeup and everything, and I'm just like crying my makeup off just because they made it to knockout stage. But it was so unexpected. It really was.
Yeah, I remember just being in shock because I was still preparing for the tiebreaker. I was like, oh great, they gotta win. All right, that's a good morale boost for the tiebreaker. But then the tiebreaker never came. And then I think it hit once I saw Shock's interview Doublelift. And Doublelift was like, he was thanking all his former teammates like Aframu, Chowster, everyone. Like, it's like, thank you to Björksen as well. I was like thanking them.
That was such a good interview for the two of them. It was so good. I mean, and it brought to mind when Shox interviewed Doublelift after they didn't make it out of groups and worlds.
Oh yeah, last year.
Yeah, and just the difference in that, because I think in both cases, the overall emotion of those interviews is still very gentle, like it isn't like super hype, even though I'm sure it was for him super hype, but just an incredibly reflective interview, and him talking about his former teammates, and then Shox is just such a wonderfully emotive person. She's so empathetic and is so great at just conveying feelings. I mean, I feel like I would be a mess if I tried to interview Double Lift at that moment, but she managed to be, you know, like so emotive, yet at the same time being able to guide, you know, him and of course us as the listeners through that interview. It was great.
And when he said, you know, when she asked him, do you have anything to say to like the fans or people who've watched you for so long? And he was like, thank you, it's been 7 years. And I just felt like, oh god, it's been doing this for 7 years, or like close to 8 years. And that's insane. And he made it out. And by that point, after that interview, I was like, okay, I'm fine. Because IG, you know, the new MSI format, it's like first place picks whoever they want to play. And I was like, of course they're not gonna pick SKT, they're not gonna pick G2, they're gonna pick Team Liquid. I thought, IG, there's no harm in losing against the current
IG?
world champions. No, I like Team Liquid. Exactly, IG. So all I asked for was like, look a bit competitive the first 10 minutes, and then if you fall apart, you did your best. That was my mindset coming into like the semifinals. And then...
so there was not that much time because this was, what was it, like a Tuesday?
Yeah, I think it was Tuesday, the last group stage.
And then they travel on Wednesday, have that Thursday, and then Friday was semis, and TL was up first against IG. And in the interim, you know, Travis Gafford runs a call-in show called Hotline League. They also, I think there was just like a lot of discourse. I can't remember, was Dyphoria also released in that interim?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so as well.
With the Jat joining in.
With Jat joining in. And then, of course, during the countdown, everybody gives their predictions. And I'm bringing all this up to say, I don't think there was a single person on any of these shows or on that desk who said that TL were going to win. And I think Papa Smithy was the person who said that it was going to be a 3-1. And Frosk said it would be a success if they just lasted longer than Fnatic did during finals. Because it was like an 89-minute total or something like that. Yeah. And so it was so funny to listen to that Friday after everything was done and be like, oh my gosh, it just was so unprecedented.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think, now I don't know if he straight up said this, but I think Jat said something like, oh, I don't think IG have taken group stage or anything seriously at all. Like, they haven't really shown their full strength. And I thought, well, of course. God, how could I have been so blind? It's IG,
exactly.
You know, they're gonna come out with some kind of no more wacky picks, and the Shy's gonna have like 58 kills, and TL are gonna get perfect game throughout the whole series, and it's gonna be a mess, but they're gonna try their best. And that's my mindset. I went in with that mindset. They're gonna try their best. And then, well, I mean, if you check my Twitter history, I basically had like a complete meltdown and my brain just shut down throughout that.
And to be fair to you and everybody else who was thinking that, I mean, some of their games during the group stage, it was like they were trying to see, and I think I even tweeted this publicly, they were trying to see how much they could lose before they could win. And it was like 25 minutes. Like they would like keep losing, and around like the 20-minute mark, they'd be like, okay, time to take this seriously. Yeah.
While Team Liquid was like, they were, like you said, scraping by.
Yeah.
They were scraping to the finish line and like hurling their half-dead bodies across the line.
And I don't want to take anything away from how important this was for TL. And I would also say that I think that Best of 5 against Invictus Gaming, they played pretty good. Like this was not they did not look bad. That game 4 where they pulled out the Lux and Skarner and it was totally unexpected for an international stage, you know, it was a real injection of NA pride because those were 2 picks that had showed up during spring split finals in St. Louis, but hadn't been played on the international stage. I don't know when Skarner was, but as people had pointed out, Lux hadn't showed up since like 2012. Yeah. And it felt good that that's how we won. I wouldn't say that those games were stomps. I wouldn't say that they were like the height of League of Legends. Primarily because I think IG lost that best of 5 almost more than TL won it. Like, I know everybody's going to think about this, but do you remember there was this, it was like a teleport or something in game 4 where they just sort of just like, threw themselves into their death. I think it was like Balan.
No, okay, okay.
Lost my mind.
Here's the thing. I think it was like, yeah, because Jensen was an Oriana, so it's like game 3, I think. Yeah. So, or, anyways, yeah.
I thought it was game 4 during the Baron pit.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
So,
but there's a number of them. The fact
exactly.
that we're not sure which play it is that we're talking about is really.
So Rookie was on Rise, and I remember like TL got the Baron, and now they're like moving away. And,
yes!
you know, and IG got a pick on Core JJ, because Core J was like, you know, he was being his usual support self and sacrificed himself in the pit. And by that point, I thought, all right, everyone's going to disengage. You know, they're going to try to, like, set up the map, things like that. And then all of a sudden, Rookie realm warps into
them, into TL, like
into TL, and
into TL.
And Jensen still has his Oriana ulti,
yes!
and it's like 4 IG members just pop up like hello, and Jensen's
and then
like
he shocks
thank
them
you.
all, and it was like okay, like I don't understand. I don't understand
Either. And then like I think I tweeted it out, but like TL's win condition during that series was basically they gave up first blood. In all the games they lost, they gave up first blood.
They gave up first Baron.
Except for, like, the last game, but yeah. And they gave up first Baron. And they still won. Which is so weird, because IG kind of show that, you know, once IG, they get the Baron, they just, like, spiral out of control. They just take every objective, and by, like, after 5 minutes, your whole base is dead. Which I thought they were gonna do. But then, like...
Yeah.
Especially in game 1, because remember, the Shy was super crazy on Rise. He was, like... one-shotting people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they got the Baron. I was like, okay, well now it's impossible because the Shy's just gonna split push. And, you know, TL are gonna die.
They never split push.
But they never split push.
They never split push. And so those are all reasons that it just feels like... I was reading, I think it was probably on Reddit, and I can't remember who it was who was saying it, where they were saying... You know, they think TL did a really good job probably preparing for the IG games, and that IG then underestimated TL.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was this whole thing that I think came up either through Kobe or one of the Dysphoria people, where they were saying how IG just doesn't like to lose anybody, so the minute somebody dies, everybody piles in to try to like, kill the other team, which had never been on fuller display than in this specified. Like, it was not a tendency I had noticed until then, and then when they pointed it out, it was like you couldn't stop seeing it. That is exactly what happened. And then there were games where the person who died was Ballad, and then they all just sort of like pile in. I was like, it's a support. It's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to die. This is how this game works.
And then it's like, yeah, like the first game when they kept grouping with their bazillion kills, 1 death, 500 million assist Rise. They just kept grouping. Like, you looked at the map, you see the Shy, he's moving to a side lane, and he hits like 1 creep. And then he turns around and goes back to the group.
Yes.
And it's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
And Double Lift is on a Sivir comp. You just group on a Sivir comp, and then you run at them. And then also that point where they kept walking into these routes. Like, Impact had a pretty wishy-washy Nico game, but he hit that 3-man route on like all the carries, and then they just blew him up.
That Pop Blossom just blew up all of IG, and then that was the turn. That was when they started winning. But that would not have been happening if IG didn't decide to just walk straight into it for some strange reason. Like, they were like, okay, now it's time. Like, you know, this is where we're supposed to pop off and kill everybody. But I was like, that's not what you know. Like, that's actually not what you're supposed to be doing at this moment.
Yeah, and then like game 2, when which was also like TL gives up first blood, TL loses first Baron. I thought that, you know, I'm happy they took 1 game off IG. So like, yeah, this is great. This is great. It was a slugfest, but they pulled back, you know, clawed their way through the jaws of defeat or whatever, and they emerged victorious.
And now here's the 3-1 that Papa Smithy predicted.
Exactly.
Right?
And now
like,
it's gonna be like the fastest, the 3-1 in the history of like fastest 3-1s ever. And then they won the second game. It was like, what's going on? What's happening?
I think this was again the game where I want to say IG takes a Baron, right? And then they, for some bizarre reason, decide not to split push on it. Wasn't this the game? Am I misremembering?
Yeah, I feel
like this was the game where they like take the Baron and then they just don't split push on it. And then somehow I think, in fact, TL manages to split
Oh,
on IG
that
with
was
the
one.
Baron.
No, when Double Lift was split pushing on his vein.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That was when Double Lift walks in Vayne, and then they get like IG gets Baron. They're like pushing up into the base, and yet Double Lift is splitting.
Yeah.
On like I want to say the top lane or something on Vayne, and I was just like, this is not like that's not how Barons work. That's not how split pushing works. Like in my mind, the idea of like a Vayne split pushing against a team that's basically knocking on the doors of your base with Baron is like not how the gameplay works, right?
Yeah, and then IG, like, instead of trying to, because Double Lift is split pushing, the AD carry is gone, instead of, like, trying to force some kind of dive or something, they just get, like, they get picked off.
Yeah!
And then the Baron just dies out. And then
it's baffling! it's like a baffling game. It's a really strange game. Right? It was a strange game. Those are like, this is what I mean. Like, I think TL played good. Like, I don't think they played at the height of League of Legends or anything, but I think they were really good, and they did things that were really good. I mean, like, there were individual plays in that best of 5 that were really amazing.
Yeah.
But
and I feel
like,
exactly.
what was IG doing?
I feel like they capitalized a lot on IG's mistakes, which was very good.
Yes.
But at the same time, there were a lot of mistakes IG made.
It was
like, at one point, it was like a buffet of mistakes, and TL could just, like, pick and choose. Oh, someone's gonna overextend. I will pick that. Oh, they're gonna try to ARAM against an NA team. I will take that. They're all gonna die with the Baron buff. We'll take that. They're gonna Rise ulti into our Orianna who has Shockwave up. We'll take that.
And I don't expect... I don't want people to think that I expected IG to be a, measured or calculated team. Like, I'm not blind. I saw how they play, But these were the games that I think everybody expected them to have in group stage when they didn't care. Yeah. Instead, it seems like what happened in between? What happened between group and knockout that this happened? I mean, so I know you and other people that we've talked to about these games have really pointed to Ning.
Yeah, as live and die by Ning. It's the IG style, but it's okay, so here's the thing with LPL teams, and I feel like it's basically like it's been the bane of their existence for such a long time, and that's that they really tend to underestimate other teams and they hype up each other, or they hype themselves up a lot. So it has a lot to do with like attitude problems and ego. And IG as a team has a lot of strong voices. I think like I would say Baolan and Rookie are pretty, mellow. Jackie Love depends, but Ning and the Shy are very headstrong. They want to do a thing a certain way, and they're going to do a thing a certain way. Which, for example, I feel like maybe they shouldn't have put Ning on Lee Sin for, what was it, like two out of the 4 games, because I feel like...
Yes, they played in the match 1 and match 2.
Exactly, because like I feel like after you see him kick Core JJ, who's on Alistar for the 58th time, maybe you should take him off the champ. Maybe this champ was not for him. But yeah, there have been interviews where former coaches have said like some players, Ning in this case, they have very strong opinions, and sometimes that's a good thing. But other times it can end up with like people kind of, especially I feel like IG kind of tilted by the end of it, because they probably thought, why aren't we winning? Like, why isn't this working out the way it should work out?
I think you could really see that in Game 4.
Yeah, especially Game 4.
They win Game 3, although it was kind of a weird game. The only thing I can really remember about that was that the Shy basically just... I mean, he got no kills, right?
Oh, yeah, it was because Rookie
went... He was like 0-1-8 or something.
And Rookie went crazy.
And Rookie just totally, it was one of those moments where you're like, this is why they don't allow Rookie to play LeBlanc, right? Yeah. Like, it was so good. I mean, he would just, like, suddenly jump forward and then decimate somebody. Yeah. And then just jump back to safety. And it like, you blinked and you missed it, and somebody on TL was dead. Like, that was the kind of game.
Exactly.
And then I think they kind of expected that to happen again in Game 4. And when it didn't happen, then you could feel them starting to just sort of like throw themselves at the game, expecting it to work.
Exactly, because like in Game 4, I think that was the first game out of the series where TL had a lead. like an early game lead. Yeah.
Yes,
and
it was.
exactly. And there's this fight. Oh god, it was so painful to watch. Like by the end, I think it's when they're at like the river near Baron, and everyone just gets picked off one by one.
Yeah.
And you can clearly see how IG are desperate. They're like running at Team Liquid. They have no setup. Everyone's just going in different directions. I feel like Rookie was the only one actually trying to have some kind of plan, but it just ended up with like someone dies, and then the fight goes on for such a long time. That person comes back, and then they run back into the fight, and then they die again. And by that time, I was like, yeah, it's over.
Yeah, I do think, I never believe in any of the teams that I support until they actually win.
Yes.
Usually for good reason. But, I mean, this was, like, the one game where I was, like, I think it was a little bit, maybe past, like, 20 minutes, you're like, they've got this, right? Mm-hmm. Like, unless they do some sort of major throw, which at that point, it didn't look like TL was going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, major league throw, I mean. It was like, I think we got this. I think we got this. Mm-hmm. Like, it's impossible, but I think we got it, right? Whereas the other games, I do feel like because IG would often get first blood, lead pretty early, get first Baron, it was kind of like, well, TL had to claw back, or TL had to wait until IG made some huge, massive mistake, which they were going to do, and then take back from there.
Yeah, and it's just, it keeps going, because this has happened so many times, so it's a bit frustrating, the whole, like, LPL teams. They underestimate the enemy, they overestimate themselves, they keep sticking to their, like, the things that work, because like it's a winning formula. Why change it? Because you're in a best of 5, you have to adapt. Like It happened to, because I remember EDG after they won MSI, people thought they were gonna win everything. I was like, they're gonna win the LPL, they're gonna go and do super well at Worlds. They didn't win the LPL. Surprisingly, LGD won, so Imp actually has an LPL championship. Fun fact. And I think like Clearlove has said that one of the reasons was that they did get complacent. They were like, oh, well, we won.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know
it's
that.
Like, he said that, that is a very big issue, that teams can grow very complacent. And if you keep winning for a while, you feel like you don't have to try as much. So you don't learn from your mistakes. And I feel like the same thing happened to RNG last year when they went up against G2 at Worlds. It was a bit of, they underestimated, and they also just stuck to the things that had worked.
Instead of adapting to what is starting to become like the new meta at Worlds. Like that was when we really saw it.
IG's foundation is basically like this new IG squad, their identity is being dumb and reckless and headstrong. But at the same time, so I feel like they're even more easily prone to being just like too caught up in their own groove. They think they're super good, which they are. They are super good. I mean, they won Worlds. But at the same time, I feel like that series really showed them you can't just, look down on everyone and think you're gonna be the best, because it's just one best of 5, and if you have a bad day, it doesn't matter how good you are,
right?
You're gonna lose, and that's kind of what happened to them. So, I don't know if they're going to change. I actually have little faith in them changing.
I was gonna ask you about this, because I think sometimes the narrative becomes, okay, well, it's skipping forward, not that this is like a spoiler for anybody. TL got totally wiped in the finals, right? So it was a 3-0, it was the shortest 3-0 in international history. TL did not look good in, I would say, I think that was definitively the worst set I've ever seen TL play. Period. Period. Okay? I will not mince words. I was not impressed. I think I am still really happy about the performance at MSI total, but that best of 5 was not good. And I think one of the things we can say about TL is I do have faith that they'll go back and they'll think about what they did. And I think it was a good experience for them to be at this international tournament and to play up against G2 and IG and know what it's like to play against teams that are so decisive, so aggressive, and so good at team fighting. I do not think that there are any lessons that I trust IG to learn from this. Maybe they'll be like, okay, we'll try to be less cocky. But I think if they go to Worlds and they have another group stage like they did at this MSI, which is that they almost perfect gamed in a way, this MSI group stage, I think we're going to see this happen again. I don't trust them to completely change their playstyle to a point where they're just not, where they're less feeling themselves. Like, I don't think that that's something, I think that's really hard to change, one. Two, I think if you change that, that might in fact change the identity of the whole team.
Exactly.
And how they play and the trust they have in themselves. So three, I guess the only thing I can hope for is that, I don't know. What is it that I hope for?
You hope that Rookie takes sole control of the brain cell and that it never moves to any other player.
But don't I want Ning to have the brain cell? I just want him to be using it, right? I thought Ning when he is thinking is good.
Okay, yes, but
I'll just leave it at that.
But also, Ning is the one who's like, okay, I kind of have a soft spot for Ning, because he's like this dumb kid, and you look out for him, and he's like, oh, watch out when you play football, don't get hit by a car, and they're like, oh, okay, and then they run into a tree or something, and you're like, oh, look at Ning go there. But, in the end, they still win their football game. Ning is kind of like that. Like, the entire LPL, he does the weirdest things, they somehow win, and he thinks, yeah, that's how it works. But yeah. I feel like after TL completely bombed out in finals, like, it was bad, guys. Let's just accept it.
It was bad.
I feel like I worry that IG are just gonna think that their loss was a fluke. And that we just had a bad day. If it was another day, we would have done well. So next time, we'll just make sure we have a good day. And it's like, okay, fine, but also you have issues. Like, you have glaring issues in your team, and you need to address them. And, I mean, I guess because Rookie said in the post-match interview that, he recognized that they were getting a bit too overhyped, or they were getting a bit too, like, inflated on their ego, and that they should play with more humility in future games. But I worry that, like, it's good that he sees that, but I don't know if the rest of the team sees that. And also, if they do see that, are they going to be able to change it? And like, is the team gonna be better if they change it? Or how's it gonna be?
I really wonder about things like that, because I think it's really hard to change your playstyle to begin with, right? So I think, say you're a team who, like TL, is always really reactive. It's really, you need to go through a period of time where you try to be really proactive and be the people who make things happen, whether or not that's like pushing this magical thing called tempo, which I try not to use anymore because apparently it means absolutely nothing in a game. But like, when you try to go for objectives that are meaningful, when you try to make sure you play to the strong side of your map, when you try to make the early things happen, right? I think that's already hard. But I think it's even harder to try to change some sort of mentality thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what does that even look like? Like, how do you even reproduce that circumstance so that you can have the practice of not looking down on a team? Because maybe next time when you go, so maybe now they know that they can't underestimate TL, but what about the next time they go and it's like Fong Vu or it's Veda Squadron or it's something, And like, it's not really a reproducible thing that you can practice in the same way you can practice even play style. So I think you're totally right about this idea of the kid who's like the idiot savant, right? Because like, I think all teams are a different way. Like, I feel like TSM is that like straight A student, right? Like, they're totally straight laced and like they study really hard and they do that. Like, that's what TSM is like. And then you have like IG, who is like the clown in the back of the room, who like magically knows all the answers.
Oh yeah,
right?
The kid who never studies and then they somehow still get amazing grades.
Exactly. And like, they're very charismatic. They're very fun to watch. You can never truly ask them to be in your study group because they haven't studied and they cannot explain to you how they got to the answers.
And they will destroy your study group if they join. Right.
And like, SKT is kind of the same way. Like, SKT is like the TSM model. Like, I think they're kind of like the straight A student, except they're like so unbelievably smart that, and they work hard and they're unbelievably smart. Like, they're like one of those students, right? Like, so it's like, that's kind of how I feel about that. And it's like really hard to change when you are the IG, when you are like that. It's like, like, even as a coach, like, how do you change that? I don't think you can. I think you just gotta hope and pray that like, whatever lesson you learned enough, it like carries enough forward.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I agree that you said that it's really hard to change mentality. But I feel like IG kind of, and I don't know if this is controversial or anything, but seeing as how G2 took down SKT and then beat TL very handily in the finals, and now they are MSI champions, I would say that in a way, IG in a measured way would kind of look like G2, because G2 are also crazy.
Right.
But never in the whole oh, somebody dies, let's all dogpile on this lost team fight when we should actually just back off. Like, in G2's case, I feel like it's a bit more measured aggression, while IG is more like, okay, it's chaotic. Sure, the IG players know what they're doing, but it's still chaotic. And most of the times, it's just because they trust their own mechanics and their own skills. Like, oh, we can outplay any team fight. So they just take them, instead of maybe just backing off and, I don't know, taking a turret or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that first game of G2 versus TL shows that, right? Like, I think G2 like surgically took down TL in that first game. And I mean, I think that's what we all expected from IG. Like, that was the game we expected to see in semifinals.
Yeah, we expected to see that. We did not expect to see Arise group up with the team in 40 minutes and not split push at all. Just thinking about it makes me shakes my hands wildly around.
So is there anything left that you would like to say about IG while we are still here?
Okay,
at
the one thing I want to say. So I'm just gonna, everybody, we don't need to talk that much about the finals because there's not much to talk about the finals. TL did their best.
No, we're gonna have to talk about the finals, but
exactly, I'm fine with it. But I feel for IG, I guess, I think the worst thing is that, like, the LPL is very big, but even though it is such a big region, it still feels very, I don't know, like the Western audience, they still don't really take LPL seriously. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even though IG completely smashed their group stage, if they had won MSI, it would have made LPL kind of like, oh, now it's for real. Even though they won Worlds. Now it's like, now it's for real.
Yes.
Because last year, it was RNG's year before Worlds. And, everyone was ready to go into the new, it's a new dynasty. It's the IG dynasty, that kind of thing.
Well,
but
at
now
least
they
it's
lost.
The LPL dynasty, right?
Exactly,
I think that's
the
what we
LPL
all
dynasty.
Expected. Yeah.
Yeah, like, now it's the continuation of the LPL dynasty. Like, this is it. They're gonna take over. And, nope, that didn't happen. And out of all the teams IG could have lost to, though I appreciate it, but still, out of all the teams, they lost to TL, the North American squad. So I do worry about how people will view the LPL now. It's a lot of, like, thanks a lot, IG, for kind of making the image return to how it was before RNG went on, like, their giant sweep and the year of the LPL began. Now it's like, I feel like, which I shouldn't feel, because technically LPL did win everything last year.
Right.
But it feels like people are gonna look at it and be like, oh, that was just like an anomaly. That's not a thing. So either they have to step it up and win Worlds again, or it's like, we have to go back to square one, or something like that.
So I remember Kelsey Moser wrote this piece last year, and it was kind of about how EU and LPL are kind of brothers in terms of the league, right? I feel like there's a lot of parallel between the two of them, both in play style and just the young talent that is on the team, right? Which they're both regions where there's a lot of young talents on those teams, and they're good, and they continuously manage to find new players to enter into that system instead of kind of trading around older players or taking in imports. At least this new iteration of LPL. I'm speaking strictly 2018 and now 2019. I think as much as I would have been happy about a TL win, in a way I'm kind of like, well, G2 proved to us that if IG is just on their best game, maybe it's possible. Like, that's kind of how I also feel about it. Like, I think LPL is on the right track, and I wish more people would see that. Like, the fact that G2 won, I think, is like actually just proof that, like, this is like this kind of style is right. Like, I don't know, because like you say, like, G2 plays in some way similar to IG, and so it wasn't like SKT winning, right? And it wasn't TL winning. It was G2 winning, which is important. And I would also say, I really feel like it's hard to then say G2 is representative of EU as a whole, because G2 smashed EU. G2 was like definitively the best team in EU this year, and possibly the best team that EU has ever sent to an international event. And so I don't know, like, I do feel like there's so much top talent in LPL that I really feel like IG is representative of how good LPL is. Maybe that's wrong, but I do feel like, there's a lot of really good teams in LPL, and I feel like if we were to do like Rift Rivals EU versus LPL, I think LPL would handily win. Maybe that was controversial. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but like I feel that is true. That's my personal opinion. Again, I can't analyze my way out of a paper bag, but I really feel like in some of the, like, I haven't seen all of LPL. I've only seen some of the finals, or the playoffs. But I just feel like that's how I feel about the teams. And so, not to take away anything from G2, they are great. They totally were the best team out there. I don't even know what a G2 versus IG game would have looked like. I'm not saying that IG would have won against G2. I think it would have been close. But I just think that's, like, if you are discounting LPL based off of that best of 5 between TL versus IG, I don't think that is the best way to go about thinking about LPL.
Yeah, I feel like you can agree, because I personally think that, G2 right now is the best team, because they showed a lot of innovation, they've shown a lot of crazy, wacky things that work out because they're good enough to pull it off. But then as a region, I still feel that LPL is the best region, just because, like, you can say G2 is the best team, but if you look at LEC, like we said, G2 completely smashed that. Like, half of the games, I didn't even know if they took them seriously, half of the games. While
I don't think they even took finals seriously against Origin. So,
and
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Europe. I'm not, like, discounting this at all. Like, any European fans out there, I'm not saying that your region is bad. I'm just saying that if you are out there saying LPL is a worse region than EU based on the fact that G2 won against TL, like, that's the disconnect. That to me is the disconnect there.
Oh, definitely. Especially if, like, you consider, IG did not live up to expectations at MSI. But LPL also won literally everything you could win last year.
Right.
Like, last year they won MSI, then they won Rift Rivals, then they won the Asian Games, and then they won Worlds. So, I don't really know what else you want them to do, but I guess, just gotta prove yourself again on the world stage. And then we'll see. Maybe be different. Maybe it's gonna be like an all-Western finals. Who knows?
So, as much as I would like to continue getting into our feelings about MSI, we should switch to our second topic. And this is kind of just, I know you and I have been ruminating on failure and success and what it means to both talk about failure and success in League of Legends esports and pro careers, but also just how the players themselves maybe think about this. And I think the context that I'd like to start this off of is, when Prey announced his retirement from being a pro player, I think there was almost a sense that his career was not a huge failure, but in a small sense marred by failure because he never won a world's title. And I think that's interesting in terms of how we evaluate pro players, because it can't be that you have to win a world's title to be considered to have your pro career be a success, right? Yet, I think when you look back on Prey's career, and, like Yellowstar's career, I think is another example, right? Like, the fact that they didn't do this monumental thing then means that we think of them as failures. So, what are other ways, like, what are other examples or ways that you've come across in terms of how we evaluate that?
I do agree a lot that I feel like League has basically become, if you don't win Worlds, then you're nothing. Or not that you're nothing, but then your achievements, they don't really mean anything.
Right.
Because Worlds is the only thing. And that's why it just feels like when a lot of people or pro players retire, it's a bit, what could have been? Except for Ambition, I guess, because once again, Ambition won Worlds.
He won Worlds, yeah.
Yeah. So when he retired, it was like, that makes sense because he won Worlds. Why continue, Or he retired after Gen G did really poorly.
But at least he had won.
But exactly, at least he had won Worlds. So that's one thing. But then you have these players who, like Yellowstar, who's led Fnatic to win so many LCS or LEC titles, and who's done like well internationally, but he just never won internationally. And then by the end of his career, he did poorly. And people just I feel like they just completely forgot everything that he did for that region.
Right.
And for like bringing up talent like Reckless or whatever, like leading all these, like when they were Fnatic were at MSI and like SOAS and everyone had left and they had Huni and Rainover, like he had to lead that.
Yeah.
And he did a lot, but because it wasn't Worlds or it wasn't an international title, then what's the point? It kind of feels like the same thing for Prey. Like Prey won LCK on 3 different teams or something, which is huge, but he never really performed up to that standard internationally.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
no, he was good internationally too. He just never won Worlds. Like, I think, that 2016 game with Ross Tigers, he was good. Like, they were good plays.
Yeah.
He just didn't end up winning. And
exactly.
That, I think, will forever be how we think about Prey, who is undoubtedly one of, like, League of Legends' historically great AD carries. And another, I mean, if you think about Score, this is probably his last year of competitive play because he has to go into the military.
Score.
Even though he's actually younger than Smithy, right? This is like kind of a funny fact, right? Like he's younger than Smithy, but the oldest player, the oldest player currently playing on LCK, and then he probably will. This will probably be his last year play because he has to go into the military due to current conscription rules. But his only title that I think most people are familiar with is that 2018 Summer LCK title, and I think when he stops playing next year, I think people may consider his career a failure, even though for many years, or not for many years, but for a good number of years, he was one if not the best jungler in LCK. He's role swapped. He's been playing consecutively in LCK since Champions was a thing in Korea, right? He was in like the very first invitational that Korea ever had. And it just feels like, and I think this is natural too. Like, I think actually if you ask many pro players, which I have before, what do you think of as success? Like, that was one of the first pieces I ever wrote for Riot, was talking about success with players. And I asked a lot of them, how would you define success? And I would say, even for players who have not had what we would consider a very successful career in any event, like they've never won any title or they're just starting off in their career, they would all tell you that the way that they define success is winning Worlds. And then they'll back from that definition. Then they'll step back from that definition. But that is like there aren't that many world champions. And it just seems like a lot to ask that that's the only way we really talk about success. But I don't know what else to do. I don't know what other metric to use.
I feel because now when we mention Score, I feel like it's basically been ingrained in everyone, player, industry figures, like fans, that winning Worlds means you've made something out of your career as a pro player. And it's just because, I always have to insert Clearlove into everything, but it basically makes me think of Clearlove because he has won a lot, and he won MSI, and he's won like a bunch of LPLs, he's won so many things, but he's never won Worlds. And there was always this expectation, there's no longer that expectation, but before it was always this expectation that, well, if EDG doesn't make it past quarters, and if they don't place themselves in finals, then it's a failure. But then when you put that in contrast to like NA teams who are like, we just want to make it out of groups.
Right.
And you just think about the different pressure, like the pressure they have and all these expectations, and just like, if you don't do this, then everything you achieved is a failure. And I don't think, like, I personally, could also be because I'm biased, but I personally don't think that Clearlove's career is a failure. The same way I don't think that... No,
absolutely not, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that Score's career either is a failure, because they've left a mark, and they've played, and they still play for such a long time, that it just feels really... I don't know, it feels really bad to just look at a player and just say that, everything you've done doesn't really matter because you haven't won Worlds.
But at the same time, I want to also respect how they feel about it, Like, I think there's an issue where I don't want it to feel like pity. I don't want it to feel like I am trying to give them a gold star for participation or anything.
Yeah.
I just feel like it can't be that the only way we evaluate whether or not a player is good is through Worlds. But that is now the lens through which we see almost all these players. And I'm thinking again of that duo's interview with Crown and Court JJ, right? Where Crown thought that if he just won Worlds, everybody would recognize that he was a great player. That he did all this for Samsung, right? That he belonged up there with the greats. He belonged up there. Like, he would be recognized. And then for him, tragically, I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
Like, even though he achieved this thing that was so difficult for so many people and is the metric by which we judge whether or not Prey, of all people, or Clear Love, of all people, are successful, he did it, and then the opposite happened. Like, people continuously say, you know, like, I think if you ran up a list of the 10 best mid laners in the history of League of Legends, I don't know if everybody would put Crown up there.
Yeah. It's exactly, because it's like, it's just, I feel like it's kind of bad. This is a personal opinion, but when you set a goal as, like, for example, like, if I win Worlds, then I will be happy and I will feel satisfied, because most of the times once you do achieve that and you don't feel that ideal way that you imagined, you're gonna be super crushed. It's kind of like in real life, if we're like, oh, once I get this job, then I'm gonna be happy, or once I get this grade, or I do well. Like, if you set objectives as the only point of your happiness and you ground it to that, it's really rare that once you do achieve that, you're gonna be happy, because then most cases people just feel like, oh, well, I achieved it, why am I not feeling like the way I had imagined? And that could be Crown, for example. Like, he thought, you know, I've sacrificed so much, I practiced so much for this one moment, and I got it, and I don't feel happy.
In fact, I think he, like, basically went through a period of deep depression after Worlds, which is such a crazy thing to say. Like, it's just really is a really crazy thing.
Also, for example, like SKT, what Bang and Wolf said about how hellish it was after they won Worlds. Like, you win Worlds, but none of your problems are really solved. It's just like, now you have to live up to those expectations. You have to set a new metric of, like, happiness. Or it's that, in Crown case, everyone basically turned his success into a meme, which was like, yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, you brought up Clear Love, so now I have to bring up Double Lift. I think,
of course,
there's this thing that is happening, that just happened in this week of TL, that to me demonstrates just how difficult it is to measure success. Because I think when we started off on Monday, I would have said just getting out of groups is enough, right? Like, that would mean you're a successful tournament. And then they did that. And then there was almost like an emotional high. Like, we thought that that was the plateau, right? Like, Double Lift was essentially giving interviews reflecting on his career. And that was because we didn't think that he could achieve anything else. That sounds really blunt, but that's true. I think that's what everybody thought on Tuesday. This was it. This was going to be the highest point. Then they beat IG. And then there was like another emotional high, right? Where we're like, now this is it. This is the highest thing that they will ever achieve. And then all that good feeling seems to dissipate. And I feel this too. I am not immune. Like, after the Nexus went down on game 3, I watched G2 pick up the trophy. I was, you know, I was really happy for them. You know, like, they're a really fun team to watch, and they're a really good team. But I immediately had, like, stopped thinking about how monumental it was that TL was on that stage at all. Because the best of 5 that they played was not inspiring. But at the same time, like, this is still, like, such a big deal for them. This was still a success. I mean, not only did like TL go the furthest, the furthest that they have ever gone at an international tournament. Not only did Double Lift make it out of groups and even made it to the final stage of an international tournament, but they also, I think, didn't they, like, win back NA's first seed for Worlds Draw? There's a lot that they did there that's really, like, that we were celebrating, and now we've stopped celebrating. And all of those contradictory things are true at the same time, right? Which is why I think, and I hope for Doublelift, he's given that, when he was on, I think it was Eyes on MSI, he talks about how right after he achieves something, it's not like he dwells on what it feels like, he just moves on, because for him, he just, like, the immediate next thing he thinks in his mind is what's next, what's next, what's next. And I get that. Like, I get that that's what's driven him for 7 years to keep playing, and I get that, but I feel like as fans, we can't always just keep asking, like, what's next? Because if the answer is, and the answer one day will always be, there is nothing next. Like, there is no more that you can achieve. And we cannot keep judging people by their last failure, which I feel like is what we do.
It's just League of Legends it feels very, like, results-based.
Yes.
If you perform poorly, then you are that poor performance for the rest of your professional life. And it's just, like, it doesn't matter what you're gonna do next, you're going to be that poor performance forever. And, like, when I go back to Clear Love, like, back in the Worlds 2016, that Lee Sin play, which he messed up, that whole Lee Sin game, where he only dealt, like, 4.3k damage, that still follows him. And it really messes with players, because, like, he tries to brush it off, but he doesn't play Lee Sin anymore, because he doesn't trust in himself that he's gonna do well. And it's just always how, like, viewers, like you said, and fans are like, we can't just, like, we ask a lot from these players, and they try their best to live up to that. And sometimes they do live up to that, which was Doublelift and TL making it all the way to finals, but then they lost poorly. And it feels like people are just gonna think about this poor performance of them, instead of just how much they achieved in, like, the whole picture or the whole spectrum of it all.
It's almost worse that they lost at finals of MSI than if they had lost against IG at semifinals, right?
Yeah.
That's how I feel right now, which is really weird to say. But I really feel as if, and maybe this is just because I'm from NA, like, I almost feel like the honorable defeat at semifinals would have been better than what happened, which is crazy, because obviously it is much more important that TL got to go up to that final stage, both for the experience and for making them feel like they've accomplished something, because this team was not easy to put together, blah blah blah, paid by Steve, whatever. Like, money does not make everything easy, like, just because you can buy every player that you want in North America does not mean that roster was easy to put together. And last year demonstrated that. And so I am also proud that they managed to push through those group performances and get to the knockout stage, and then even keep it together through IG, and then face up against G2. But even me, who, like, these, like, even as I'm saying this, I fell into this trap where I turned off the stream after they lost and said, well, they're failures. Like, they failed. This was a bad MSI for them.
It's just, I mean, and it's the same way for me. I think it's I'm not saying that, like, oh, we're perfect because we figure out our emotions, because trust me, you can take one look at my Twitter. I have never figured out my emotions. And it's the thing, like, the first thing, if somebody loses, it's like, oh, well, that's it. That's, like, they failed.
They suck. Yeah,
they suck.
Bad.
But you don't think about, like, how they got to that point. It's like, okay, they lost, they suck. Well, moving on, hoping for that. But, like, I feel like I had to do it as well. I had to remind myself, hey, they beat IG in the semifinals. They made it out of groups. They beat IG in a best of 5. They got to finals. Yeah. It's like, you have to, the fact that you have to, like, take multiple steps to remind yourself that, like, hey, maybe it wasn't a failure. It's just, I think that's why it's so easy for, like, League fans to be very, like, we only look at results. And we remember the bad performances more than the consistent performances. Like, this person has been consistently good, but they messed up here, so now they are bad. And that, I mean, I feel like it's very difficult to, like, I can't ask everyone to be a bit kinder and, like, think a bit more, and, like, don't try to have knee-jerk reactions, because it's very human to have knee-jerk reactions. But I think what I want to say is that like sometimes we should probably cut some slack to players because at the end of the day, they're the ones who actually lost. And they're the ones who feel the worst about it.
Yeah. And again, I'm not asking us to never have these kind of results-based analysis, because that's true. Like, it is true that they lost. Like, I'm not taking that away. I just think sometimes it would be nice, when we think about, either when we're thinking about retrospectively their career or when we react to things, like, to let that not be our only reaction.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, another thing I feel like is that now we have all forgotten how great Fangvu Buffalo was, right? Because G2 won, and, like, we're done with all the, like, play-in stage teams. Like, we're never going to think about them again until, Like, and that's another thing that I think we even forget about, the successes along the way that don't pan out. Because Fangvu didn't make it to knockout stage. So, what does it matter?
Exactly.
Well,
it's
hard. Life is hard. Everybody be kind to yourself. Esports is suffering. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. TLDR, don't watch that G2 versus TL finals if you haven't already.
Please, don't watch that. We've been talking a lot about it, so instead of watching that, you can just listen to us rant about it here.
Alright, so now we will do recommendations. And actually both of our recommendations, I think, relate to the same international event. But Linda, what is your recommendation?
Well, since we just told you guys not to watch TL versus G2 finals, I'm going to recommend a very far superior best of 5, which is EDG versus SKT at MSI 2015. And
what happens at the end of this, Linda?
Well, TLDR, EDG wins, but it's the way they win, which is in Game 5, they pull off this super cool draft where they bait Faker into picking LeBlanc. And Faker has not lost on LeBlanc, like, to this point. He has gone undefeated with this champion. But EDG has this anti-LeBlanc comp. They got Morgana in mid lane with Pawn.
Yes. They
got, like, all this point and click CC, like Maokai and everything. And Clearlove picks his trademark champion, Evelyn. So it's basically like Clearlove's Evelyn trademark versus Faker's LeBlanc trademark champion. And it's just first of all, it goes to the 5th game. So definitely not like TL versus G2.
Right.
Sorry, TL, but that's just how it is. And it's the first MSI, and it's the first time SKT lost to a non-Korean team.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of people brush off that part of history because, once again, it was 2015.
No, they brushed it off because there were 2 Koreans on EDG. And we didn't get to this in this episode, but I do not like the way some of this discourse is going. And that is one example. I feel like it really takes away from what EDG accomplished and also what, like, Deft and Pawn accomplished, like, integrating into an LPL team.
Yeah.
So instead, it's just like, who has more Koreans? Like, no, like, just because Deft and Pawn were on EDG does not mean that it was not the first time SKT lost to a non-Korean team. Period.
Exactly. And I feel like that's it's a historic moment, and it sucks that people, like we said, they brush it away because EDG hasn't had the best international performances. So people just forget everything that EDG as a team has done.
Yes.
Which was, they did a lot of first time ever things in League of Legends. And that's my recommendation.
So my recommendation is related to this, which is they put out they being Riot, put out this teaser called Who Owns the Rift for 2015 MSI. It's a really interesting teaser. First of all, it's in the form of, like, an epic poem. It's kind of cheesy, but they do these computer graphic sand sculptures is the best way I can think of. It's like particles coming together to form images, and they're of champions, but the champions then morph into each of the logos of each of the regions, and then you realize the poem is actually breaking down what was at the time the story of each of the regions. So LCK, for instance, was the king who stands alone on their throne, and then NA it's really cool. It's like this it's the NALCS, then the NALCS logo, and it had these slashes across it because they were the region that was always losing but never truly defeated. And then LPL was this great dragon, and so it's super cheesy, but I think it was really cool that they call out all the regions, they try to give them all a narrative, and it really built this feeling of, I think at the time, and still now, what MSI represents, which is the coming together of the best of all the regions to duke it out.
Yeah.
In this death match. And then that's what it was. And then in this case, EDG won the death match. And so it's fun to look at that in the context of both the 2015 storylines, but also some of the lines, and I was listening to it this morning, it still holds true because the LPL line was a dragon that could be felled only by its own might. And I feel like that, there's still kind of this, like, is that still true? Is that still LPL? And,
well, by the looks of IG, it's still very true.
Right? Like, it just still is one of those things where I was like, interesting. And then, and this is another one. I believe the EU LCS line was that they used to be a pack of wolves who hunted together, and then they all split up, and now are coming back together to try to reclaim their dominance. And for G2, that's still such a great line. And I know this is all coincidental unless we truly think that Riot has been scripting this since 2015, but it just feels really interesting to go back and be like, wow, like those are narratives, and they're like zodiac horoscopes in a way that you could read whatever it is that you want into them. But today, at this moment, it still feels like it's accurate.
Somebody should make a League of Legends esports zodiac out there. Who is a TSM?
I'm surprised that there's not a horoscope already. I don't know how would you figure out your alignment though? Like what is it birthdays? If you are born in this period of time, then your team is like TSM? Is that the idea? Is that what you're saying?
Or maybe everyone logs into the client and then they play one game and you see which people run it down and which people don't run it down. And then you base it off of that. So,
like, if say your birthday, is, like, in March and you run it down, then we assume that everybody born in March runs it down. Is that the idea?
I mean, so just some ideas for future,
okay.
If Riot's listening in. We'll workshop this, exactly.
Well, thank you, Linda, for joining me. It's been a hard week. We've all worked hard.
Yes, but it's always fun. It's always fun to chat with you.
Thank you. It is always fun to chat with you, too. There is no person I would like to get into my feelings about MSI more than you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find us on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/potofages. We are also on Twitter at twitter.com/potofages. Please send us any comments, concerns, questions, future topic ideas that you may have. We are always open to suggestions. Like always, thank you, Linda, for joining me. And for both of us, we hope you have a really good rest now that MSI is over, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.